Welcome, friends. This is Agostino with Bulletproof Cash Flow. So today we're going to talk about how you can save literally millions of dollars using the right due diligence process. Okay, we're going to talk about due diligence and why it's important. Now, before I get into that, I want to just tell you a little bit about Bulletproof Cash Flow, who I am and what we do. So Bulletproof Cash Flow, we actually have a media and education business. We help people get into the real estate game, okay? And by doing that, we're helping you guys build success the same way I did. I literally walked in your shoes, guys. I was doing corporate America. I was doing the whole CIO thing and living the 40-40-40 plan, right? You work 40 hours a week for 40 years for 40% of your money because the government stole 60% of it. That's what I was doing, like many people out there. There is another way. The other way is real estate, okay? And that's what I ended up doing. And in that time, my partners and I have now done about $350 million worth of multifamily development and net lease types of assets. Okay, so like I said earlier, today we are helping people get into the real estate game. Feel free to check out Bulletproof Cash Flow on the YouTube channel. We have, over 400 videos, something like that, probably more than that. Just all about multifamily and real estate in general, all right, primarily commercial real estate. So to that end, I wanted to share that with you. And really, when you get an opportunity after this live simulcast here, go ahead and check all that out. Plenty of great information out there, totally free. Go ahead and jump into it, okay? So, but like I said earlier, today we're going to talk about how you can literally save millions of dollars by doing the right due diligence, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about the three things that you have to look for when you are looking at an asset. Now, it gives you an opportunity to uncover issues with a property, depending on maybe the physical, some of the legal aspects, some of the financial aspects too, right? Those three things. But before I get into all that stuff, I want to introduce you to the concept of what's called retrading, okay? This does not give you a license to go ahead and start retrading people. I actually, my group and I were known not to retrade, right? Meaning you commit to doing a deal at a certain number, and then you just to get it under contract, and then what do? You change the terms of the deal later on. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes that, okay? What's best is you're gonna go in with the information you have in front of you, and you basically be very upfront with the brokers. I don't want to turn this into a whole retrading type of webinar here, but the intent here is to get all the information from the broker and from the seller when you're doing a deal, when you're looking at a deal, and you are dismantling it all, and you're going to make a decision based on the information you have in front of you before you go ahead and commit to doing that deal at that number. Okay, and you communicate that. You communicate that. So that way, everyone involved understands what the price is. You're not going to go ahead and start retrading, changing the terms of the deal just because something that was readily apparent is now you're trying to get squirrel out of the deal. Nobody likes that stuff, especially after you have it locked up for like 30 plus days, and now you're trying to change the terms of the deal. All right, so that's not what this is. This is really for you to commit to a deal, commit to a number, and everybody's on the up and up. And you communicate this. It's very important. If you want to know more about how to communicate with brokers, if you go to www.guidetobrokers.com, there's a free ebook. Go ahead and download it. I talk a lot about building credibility with brokers. That's a real big part of it. They want to deal with people that are not going to retrade. They want to deal with people that are not going to retrade, not screw with their money. Always, okay? Very, very important. But we're going to get into the due diligence part of it. There's three main areas that you need to focus on in your due diligence, okay? The first is your physical due diligence. This is the first thing you do. What I do is when I walk a property, I put myself in the shoes of a person that's going to live there. I take off my investor hat for a second, and I put on my resident hat, my tenant hat, whatever you want to call it. I start looking around. I start looking at deferred maintenance. I start looking at the roof. I start looking at the plumbing. I start looking at HVAC. If you can see the HVAC systems, the air conditioning systems, right? If you're able to see them. I look for issues there, okay? I start looking around. How does it make me feel? If I don't feel safe, if I see graffiti on the walls, or I see that the brickwork is all is all messed up and needs to be repointed, it's a sign, right? It doesn't mean it's a deal killer, by no means. You just have to include that in what you're trying to do, right? So some guys out there, especially in where we are in the economic cycle, they're demanding top dollar for their money. They haven't recovered from the 3% rates that were just here, a year ago, right? Now we're at almost 8. And, the money is more expensive now. That has to be built into the overall cost, right? Anyway, you're looking for some of these deferred maintenance issues. But always, always, always get an inspector, get an inspector that knows what they're doing to go through the property as well. Okay, they're going to look for the asbestos, the lead paint, the roof, the type of problems with the roof, if any, right? How many layers might be on the roof? And maybe, some people, if it's one of those pitched roofs, they'll keep on putting layer after layer after layer. Next thing you know, you might have 6 layers on that roof. You won't be able to add a 7th, right? Whatever it might be. So these are things that you want to know going in. All right, you want to know going in what's going on with the assets. You also want to look at the conditions of the units. You want to look at the appliances. Appliances these days, tremendously expensive. Cabinets, especially for kitchen, tremendously expensive, right? You do that a little later when you get the deal under contract. When you first walk the property, you're doing what I said earlier, right? Just taking a cursory look around. But when you start digging in, you want to inspect the units. You want to look at all the aspects of the units. I mean, I've looked at units. We discovered during due diligence that after we committed to doing a deal, we walked into one unit, the entire ceiling was gone, just gone. There's no ceiling. They ripped out the ceiling and just left it there. Closed the door, locked it up. They weren't going to tell us, right? And so we went back to the sellers and say, hey, what gives with this? Like, we didn't sign up for this. We expected every unit to be intact. Certainly we didn't bust our chops about it, but we did let them know that we did see it. Right. So, and here's the thing. If you see one thing like that, there will be more. Always, always. Right. Take it from experience. I've been through this before. So, what you're looking for, though, is you're looking for things like that when you're looking at the units. You're looking for leaks, too. Like if you're looking at the ceiling, you see spots, those brown spots that show water might have come through. You're looking at water anywhere in the basement area, any gathering of water. You're looking at the age of certain HVAC systems or water tank systems or heating systems, whatever. These are things you want to look at, and you want to look at the functionality of these assets as well, right? In the Midwest, you're going to find a lot of boiler systems here, a lot of boiler systems, and a boiler is just the heating system for these older properties. Some of the properties that are built here in, say I'm in Cleveland right now, but here in the Midwest, they've been built over 100 years ago. And many of those boiler systems may actually still be in there, all right? Or at a minimum, they're probably 60, 70 years old, 50 years old. Some of them are newer, right? But those boiler systems, a lot to maintain and a lot to heat up. And it's all on the landlord to fix the asset, to fix that deal if it's broken, to fix that component if it's broken, right? It becomes our problem, not the problem of the person living there. So you have to understand what you're dealing with. If you have to go ahead and replace that boiler system or repair that boiler system, you want to know what you're dealing with, okay? Look at the water heaters. Are they gas or are they electric? How old are they? Do you see any leaks there too, right? Inspect the sewer lines for any line breaks. Okay, that's a big thing, especially on again, older properties or newer ones, doesn't matter. If the sewer line going out to the main line underneath the street is broken, tremendously expensive, okay? If you start seeing trees that, say you're looking at an asset and there's trees like along maybe in front of the building, the roots will sometimes go out and break those lines. You want to understand by just doing a line inspection. It might cost $300 or $400 or $500 to do it. It's worth it if there's a break. I've actually personally done that. I've gone ahead and spent the money for a sewage line break and found that was indeed broken. Got a credit and we fixed it. Right? It does happen. It does happen. In that case, it wasn't even because there was a tree there. It was, I think it just broke over time. It was one of those ceramic lines. They used to build those things out of ceramic. So look for that. Look for irrigation systems, any type of landscaping issues for, like, say for instance, you have those the automatic spraying systems, right? Check all the heads, make sure everything works okay there. Verify any exterior paint or siding doesn't need any immediate replacement, things like that. Make sure all the lighting in the parking lot is properly lit up. Now, here's the thing. If it's like, say, metal halide or something like that, the old-fashioned lighting, okay, and you know that it's there, and you're going to bid, you're going to price your deal based on that. That's okay. Go ahead and do it. Do it. Fine. Maybe you want to go ahead and replace all that lighting with LED lighting to brighten the place up. It looks very, very bright, very inviting, makes people feel safe when they park their cars. You know what? That's a great value add scenario that you can take advantage of. Okay, it doesn't mean you should lowball just because you saw bad lighting. And again, when a case like this, the lighting is there. You see the lighting. You see it. You know how to price it. Okay, price it accordingly. But meaning that, don't say, well, I had one guy do this once. They wanted to retrade us because they saw those 2 potholes in the parking lot. It isn't like I just went ahead and put those potholes there. They were there before. They were there when they toured the asset 4 times. All of a sudden, they noticed the potholes. That's just bad business. That's a newbie experience right there. Don't do that. Okay? You're going to immediately show the people that you're not to be trusted, because if you're going to start retrading on things that were already there, it's a bad look. All right? Go in strong. Go in based on what you see and what the numbers present in front of you. Okay? So what else do you look at? You look at the cost of turning the units. The cost of turning units vary from place to place, okay? If you're going to keep the carpets in there, if you do have carpets, lately, I'll say not lately, probably over the past several years anyway, we've been moving everything to LVT flooring, the vinyl flooring, the thick stuff, because it holds up way better compared to carpeting. Carpeting, you might get 2-3 tenants out of it, maybe if they stay 2 years each, if you're lucky. But after that, you're ripping that stuff out anyway. But the carpeting wears out quick. It wears out quick. And the people living there are not going to take really good care of it. So I would suggest going to LVT flooring. It does cost you more up front, but it'll last way longer than the carpeting will. Okay. Like I said, appliances are a lot of money. Fixtures, you're better off spending more money on quality fixtures than you are on getting the cheap stuff from Home Depot that are made of plastic. They literally have fixtures made out of plastic. Do not buy those. All it's going to do is it's going to break in a very short amount of time, especially, again, how rough some people may be with the fixtures. You want to put in good quality fixtures, because if they spring a leak, they're not even going to tell you. And then it's on you if you're paying the water to fix it, right? Look at the common areas. Look at the leasing office. Look at the amenity spaces, the hallways, all those things. Again, make sure all this stuff is well lit. Make sure it looks good. Make sure that the leasing office looks inviting. And if it doesn't look inviting, budget to put in money aside to do that kind of stuff, right? To fix it up, to make it look great, because that's the first thing that people are going to see. Again, you're walking in with your resident hat on. How do you feel when you walk into the office? Do you feel good about it? Or do you feel a little bit, off-put by the whole thing? Maybe they have shag carpet from the 70s. Maybe they have the super old artwork on the wall. I've been in those types of places where we actually bought those types of assets and we rip out all that stuff and modernized it to make it look really, really nice, right? We wanted it to be inviting to the people that come and visit us and eventually want to stay, right? Security is one of those things that is becoming a very important thing. It's always been important, but I'd say that especially in common areas, what sort of security there is currently in place, and if there's no security in place, what would you need to do to make sure that there is security there? Okay, so security guards are tremendously expensive. Maybe do some sort of key fob or magnetic lock on the door, so that when you swipe, it'll unlock it and people can get in and out. These are things that you can consider, not part of due diligence, but things you may want to consider as part of your upgrade plan down the road. Okay, so these are things you want to look at. Okay, any type of retail spaces that you have. All right, so let's say, for instance, retail opportunities. let's say that there's a laundry room, okay? Is there an opportunity for you to put in a snack machine, Coke machine, whatever, so that way people can be spending money with you. You're giving them value, of course, right? And they can go ahead and do the laundry and do what they need to do while they're also having a snack or something like that. Okay, these are things you want to take a look at. And lastly, I would say a big part of this is that how are utilities paid for? Now, previously, I'd say over the past 15 years or so, there's been this real big move, especially to push utilities onto the tenants. Okay, water, gas, electric, all those things. Historically, in some areas, the landlord would be responsible for paying that kind of stuff. The landlord would have been responsible for paying the water and paying the gas and paying the in some cases, even electric. It's wild. It becomes tremendously expensive when you do that as an owner. Okay, and you can do RUBS, that's one option, ratio utility billing system, or you can just sub-meter, right? Just get the sub-meters installed. But again, these are things that when you're doing your due diligence, you want to understand how bills are allocated to the people living there, so it falls less on you as an owner and more on the tenant for their usage of the water. And you'll also find too, when they realize that they're paying for the water out of their own pocket, they're going to turn it off whenever it's not in use. All right, I'll guarantee you that. All right, so we found that too in our properties where we saw the water bill was super, super high. And once we implemented RUBS, in some assets or in other assets we installed meters, the water bill drops significantly, right? Because now they're paying for it. It's, nature of the beast. If they're not paying for it, it's out of their purview. They just use it willy-nilly, right? So again, these are things that provide just an oversight of what you need to be looking for. The inspector report will summarize all their findings, maybe even recommended repairs, all those types of things from a structural perspective. But you as an owner, you as someone that's going to be walking the asset, okay, yes, you need to consider what the inspector is saying, but how are you going to make the property better? How are you going to do it? What are you going to do? What are you going to replace? Are you going to put the better lighting in there? Are you going to split up the utilities so now it's less money on you and more on the tenant so they can really be responsible for their own utilities, right? These are things that you need to understand when you're putting these deals together, all right? Secondly, financial due diligence. This due diligence is where the rubber meets the road. All right, now what you're looking to do here is really audit the numbers, understand what you're dealing with when it comes to the financial performance of the asset. Keep in mind, some people make some real big mistakes by putting in a real crappy operational partner, i.e. property management, that'll burn through cash like crazy. Okay, you're looking for opportunities like this. You're looking for them because sometimes the owner doesn't realize how bad their property manager is. Okay? Sometimes they don't. This is an opportunity for you as a potential buyer to spot those certain things, okay? Break out all the costs and figure out how much is a property manager actually costing, okay? Now, if the property manager that's currently in place is a known entity in the market and they're known to run properties very, very well, but that specific asset is not performing well, take a deeper dive. Look for issues there that could be revealing of other problems, right? Are there major structural issues that they're covering up or whatever the case may be? And again, I know it sounds like we're trying to find like all these certain problems with because you're dealing with a cloak and dagger type scenario. Someone's trying to get you. Unfortunately, that's what's going on here, right? That is the approach you need to take. You are trying to kill the deal. You're trying to kill the deal. The deal needs to prove that it's worth pursuing. This second step right here, where the numbers are, is going to be where it happens. Why? Because the numbers don't lie. That's why. That's why you're doing it here, okay? You're trying to kill the deal. And if the deal survives, then great. Then it means it's worthy of your attention. Otherwise, if it's not, you get rid of it, okay? So what are we doing? You're looking at what's called the rent roll first. Okay, the rent roll. This is how much money, like each person that lives there, how much money they've put into the deal in terms of their security deposit, how much money they're paying per month, how long their lease is, things like that. All right, it's called a rent roll. And you're looking at the market rent versus the actuals for that local area. And you can go to, say, Rentometer or Rentometer, depending on how you want to do it, rentometer.com. And you can get an idea roughly as to what those types of unit sizes are renting in that general area. You can also look on Zillow or one of those other ones too to get a second opinion. I think that Redfin might be owned by the same company, or they get the data from the same place as Zillow does. Anyway, you want to get an idea as to where the rents are and where the rents are for your subject asset and what the rents are actually in that market, right? And you also want to understand what the vacancy is, right? Some markets have a 7% vacancy, a 5% vacancy. It depends on the strength of the market. If you're dealing in a tertiary market, where the population is very, very small, there's not a whole lot of jobs there or whatever, vacancy may actually be higher, okay? I personally do not like doing those sorts of deals. I like to do deals where there's a lot of activity. There's money there. There's transactions taking place in that market. I like those deals. I feel better about doing those deals, whether it's acquisition or development or even net lease, any of them. Wherever there's activity, there's money. Wherever there's activity, there's money. There's a reason for people to be there. And you don't want to be the first one there trying to build a community. That's the last thing you want to do. You don't want to take on all the risk. It's not the upside's not worth it. Okay, so the vacancy will tell you that, and sometimes a broker can get you some of that information as far as what the overall vacancy of the market is concerned. Generally, 5 to 7% is normal, I guess, for a larger community. But if you're dealing with a 15% vacancy, that's a little scary to me. I wouldn't do that deal just based on that alone. It's just too scary for me, right? You also want to review the property's historic financials, right, for at least 2 years. You want to look at their KPIs. You want to look at their NOI, their net operating income, their expense ratio. Typically for, like, say, a C-class asset here in the Midwest, built in the 60s, a lot of that product out there, you're probably looking at about a 58 to 60% expense ratio, roughly. Okay, why is it a little higher? It's because here in the Midwest, a lot of expenses fall on the owner, the landlord. And if you're able to push those expenses, like I mentioned previously, utilities especially, back on the tenant, you can probably get it down to 55, but those assets do require a little more maintenance, okay? They just do. Compared to, like, say, our development deals, brand new, nothing wrong with them, you might have a 40% expense ratio, right? So the expense ratio, 40, 50, 60%, depending on the asset class, depending how new it is, all those things matter. Okay, so if you start seeing crazy expense ratios, 75% expense ratios, there's something else wrong there, right? Could be a management issue. Could be just not run properly, more than likely. So you're also looking for the debt service coverage ratio, DSCR or DCR, it's referred to either one, right? Debt service ratio, debt service coverage ratio. And the banks will always go for a 1.25. That's what they'll pull the trigger on doing a deal if it's 1.25. They'll be all excited about it. You should not be. I'll tell you why. 1.25, all it means is, like, think of it 1-to-1. That means your income coming in is enough to cover the debt. So the bank gets paid. That's it. The 0.25 is just enough to cover maybe other ancillary expenses. So 1.25 is enough to cover the bank, ancillary expenses. That's it. You're not making any money. That's why I don't get excited about a 1.25 deal. Unless you're going in knowing that this is a bridge type of deal. This is a deal where you're going to go in, you're going to fix it up, then you're going to make the money later on down the road. If that's a deal you're doing, then it's fine. But if you're going in expecting to cash flow on day one, that's not good. You don't want to do a deal like that. All right. We're also looking at all of the income. So that means you're looking at bank statements. All right. So some sellers do not want to give up the bank statements, right? Especially if they're a little sloppy with their accounting work, their bookkeeping work. They mix everything up into one account. Typically, the pros don't do that kind of stuff. If you're dealing with smaller assets, mom and pops, they will typically do that kind of stuff. So be prepared for that. I mean, I generally like to look at that. And here's the thing. If you don't look for it and you try to get some sort of agency financing, I'm not saying that you are, that's a little tougher to get. But if you do, the banks, they're going to ask for it, right? So like if you are going to get agency financing on a deal like that, you're going to make sure that you at least be prepared to get that type of stuff because you're going to need that data. Look, you have to look for irregularities in the financials, though, that could indicate a larger issue. Do you see a huge capex on, say, sewage lines, sewage cleaning lines? What does that mean? Is there a busted sewage line and they just don't want to fix it? And maybe it's a $30,000 job? Maybe. You want to know that. All right. Another thing is that the cost of insurance has raised dramatically, crazy, especially down in Florida. It's nuts what's going on right now. Some of these premiums have literally tripled. Okay, it's almost impossible to buy the asset just based on the insurance alone because of how expensive it is. So make sure that before you commit to doing anything, before you submit the LOI, at least run the asset by your insurance carrier, your insurance agent there, and let them take a look at it and give you an idea as to what they think that the insurance is going to come in at, because you'll be surprised. Like you might budget $100,000 for insurance and it comes back at $3 million. It does happen. Okay. So that's what's happening these days. It's just a function of where we are in the economy. As the economy starts slowing down a little bit, crime, especially crime, starts going up in some major metros. And of course, who's there to pick up the slack? Insurance companies. They're the ones that's on them to pay for it, right? So you want to make sure that's in check. Okay. So you're also looking for one-time fees, right? Or one-time lease buyouts. Okay. So are they trying to get rid of tenants or not in there? Okay. Why is that? You're also looking for unusually large or frequent concessions. Okay. Where they're just trying to get heads on beds. Now, what does that mean? That means, let's say, for instance, they're planning for a sale in May, but back in February, they're doing all kinds of specials, rent specials, just to fill up the asset, to raise occupancy. If that's the case, okay? You might have a bunch of people that are really unqualified to be there in May. So what does that mean? After you close, you'll be spending the latter part of the year getting rid of all these unqualified people, and you're going to have a mess on your hands in terms of evictions and such. So you want to understand what you're dealing with there. Okay, nothing wrong with having a rent special, nothing wrong with that. People do it all the time, okay? You want to understand going in, what's going on, what's the condition of these tenants that are living there? Because again, the tenants are what make the community. The tenants are what make the community. You're not just buying a property, you're buying a culture. Think of it for a second. You're not just buying a property, you're buying a culture. The people that built that culture, how strong is it? Are they good people? Are they going to pay on time? Are they going to bust your chops about a bunch of different things all day, every day? Do you really want to sign up for that? Probably not, So you're buying not just a property, you're buying a business. You're buying the brand, you're buying the culture, all of it, right? So understand what it is you're getting into, and that's part of it too, is if you're just filling it up with a bunch of people that don't want to pay their rent, you're going to have a problem, right? So what else we got to go through? We're going to go through the historical averages and try to explain, have them explain any types of weird spikes that are happening in terms of revenue too, okay? In terms of like rental income and stuff like that on a month-by-month basis. If you start seeing there's a big pop in January, February, then March is a big jump, April, May, June, July, and then nothing else happens. Why is that? What happened with the revenue there? Why did it suddenly go up? It should be fairly steady is what you're expecting to see, okay? You're also looking at CapEx. Was there a lot of money spent on the asset? And if so, how did the occupancy increase? How did the occupancy increase, if any? If it did not, why? What happened? What's going on there? Okay? You want to understand those sorts of things. Look at the account receivables. Are they collecting all their rents, or are people just bouncing, getting evicted and just leaving and not paying their part of the rent, right? How much is owed to them? Maybe placed in collections. You want to know that too, because a lot of people don't realize that if someone does get evicted and they owe 10 grand, you can go and collect it. It's possible. Are you going to see that money? It's hard to say, but it is still collectible even after you buy the asset. Okay, so you can certainly go ahead, get a judgment, get all that fun stuff. You can certainly go ahead and fight it too. You can do all that if that's what it is. But really, we're in the business of buying assets and cash flowing them. We're not really in the collection business. Maybe someone will buy that off of you. That's a whole other discussion too, right? So what else? Understand the utility expenses too. All right, and we talked a little bit about this earlier, but try to understand who's paying the expenses. Okay, in terms of the utilities and such. Also, look at any type of other payments that are due to vendors too, and see are those in check. Like if you have an AT&T bill and the phone line is $350 for one line, for a basic POTS line, plain old telephone line, why is that? Clearly someone let that slide. It could be an opportunity for you to save some money, right? You don't have to disclose it if you don't want to. But you know what? If you're going to be buying the asset, you're trying to find opportunities to improve it and improve the overall NOI, and that could be one of them. You're also looking for unwanted surprises like off-book transactions. That's a big one too. So were things that should have been charged. Maybe the broker or the seller said that they took care of XYZ, but you don't see it in the in the book, in the chart of accounts or anything. You don't see it there. Ask them about it, and they suddenly present an invoice to you. What does that mean? Could mean that they're keeping a second set of books off to the side. Could be. Don't know. This is what you're looking for. Okay. You're looking at all the fees charged by the property management company as well. You probably at some point, the lender will ask for the property management agreement of the company you're going to be using. So just be aware of that. Review any types of insurance policies. Make sure that the premiums on the policies are active as well. If you're looking for agency debt, like I talked about before, make sure every income and expense item is accounted for. You have to have it because they're gonna go into it like very, very deep. All right, that's how the agencies do it. Okay. You're also looking for the overall property performance. Okay, remember, no one lies just once on these types of deals. If you start spotting correction after correction after correction after correction, oh, sorry this, sorry that. Unfortunately, there's a lot. You're going to find a lot of other sorries as you're going through the deal. Okay, and at that point, your guard continues to go up. And if it finally gets to a point where you want to abandon the deal altogether, maybe you should. Why would I say something like that? Maybe you're trying to find some upside, right? And that's okay. But here's the thing. If you're going to be going after a deal and both parties are supposed to be operating both in good faith, but the seller is like playing hide the ball and hiding some major issues with the property, and now it's up to you to play Sherlock Holmes and try to figure it out. Do you really want to do that deal? Like, do you really honestly want to be in a position where you're on your heels, so to speak? You're just trying to figure things out, and this person's trying to hide everything. It's not really a good scene. I mean, there's people that do that, by the way. There are plenty of guys that do that out there. Plenty of them, right? And I can assure you that it's not fun to try to be the person to uncover all that stuff. I mean, I've done it, but we also have teams of people, and we've done it before. We kind of know what we're looking for, right? We cover some of this stuff in our training, by the way, too. So if you ever want to learn how to do this stuff, yes, you can get into some of our coaching, some of our masterminds, and we go through and we help you try to figure all that stuff out, right? So go ahead and check that out too, by the way. You have the Multifamily Advantage or Multifamily Accelerator, either one of these programs. We go through some of these nuances, because I'll tell you what, to try to find all these things on your own is extremely difficult, all right? And just saying that it's one of those things that you're going to want to understand going into a deal, okay? The right due diligence will expose the property's true performance in all the risk areas, Okay, so you just got to dig very, very deep when you're putting all this together. Now, the last thing, number 3, regulatory and legal due diligence. Now, here you have to get a deep understanding because the lender is going to be doing a deep dive themselves, right? So you want to research the property's compliance with all the relevant laws and all the regulations, okay? Understand what the city does when it comes to landlord-tenant policy. Don't assume that just because you're buying in a red state, the city is going to be landlord friendly too. It's not true. It is absolutely not true, right? Just because you're in a red state, I know everybody's running to all the red states and they get all excited about it. The thing is though, if that city is not landlord friendly, what do I mean by not landlord friendly? Maybe they're not overtly landlord friendly because they don't just do an eviction quickly. Some parts of Texas, for instance, very landlord friendly, right? But there's other parts. Here in Ohio, it's a red state, right? However, what does the city do? They charge rental registration fee. They charge point of sale fee. They charge unit registration fee. They charge all these other fees. Does that sound very landlord friendly to you? No, not really. Then evictions is another problem, right? Getting rid of the people that aren't doing they're fulfilling their end of the bargain in terms of paying the rent on time. They're not doing what they need to do either. It takes months to get rid of them, right? Happens in a lot of places, including red states. Understand, that's nothing to do with the property directly, but understand when you're going to buy that asset, what's going on in that local market. You want to know what's going on, okay? You also want to understand if there's current litigation pending by any tenants or employees on that property too, right? Make sure that you have all your fair housing and ADA regulations all in check too. Are there any open violations with the city or code violations or anything else like that? And make sure they have any compliance with voucher or subsidy programs too, right? Some people they will just say, for instance, if there's bad windows, for instance, and the Section 8 people want to have them all fixed, they will withhold all their money until you fix all that stuff. Now, I personally do not like to be in business with the government. That's just my bag, all right? When I'm doing these types of deals, these C-class type deals, right? But again, this is the reason why. They'll hold that money hostage, all right? And if you're looking at an asset that has this type of case, you're going to have to go in and fix all those things. You want to understand what sort of Section 8 there is in there and what sort of money they might be holding back, okay? Review the tenant qualification process too. How do they screen? How do they underwrite? What is the condition of the leasing office to let people into the asset? Again, you're buying a business with a culture, and if the way that they're building this community allows just anybody into the asset, anyone, what are you buying? You're buying a problem, right? You're buying the lowest common denominator, and typically those folks will not pay the rent. They don't even work. And maybe you're into that, and that's okay, right? However, if you're looking to buy a good quality asset that's going to produce the income that you are promising to your investors, it's going to be very difficult to do when the community living there doesn't support that objective. You want to make sure you get the right asset with the right community in place, okay? You're doing a lease audit too, by the way. You're confirming that all the proper language is in there. Make sure you're protecting the landlord. Make sure that if you do plan on splitting up the water and utilities, make sure that language is in there. And if it's not in there, good to know. You can build it in when you take it over, and you can put all that language in there. So as leases renew, you can say you reserve the right to implement a water charge or something like that, or to push that fee back onto the person living there, okay? You want to make sure that language is in there, or if it's not in there, put it in there, right, down the road. Evaluate the eviction processes and make sure they follow all legal requirements as well, too. So you want to do that. I mentioned lead paint earlier. So look for lead paint violations or anything else like that. Some cities, again, many of these blue cities, they're making landlords do these lead paint inspection things now. If you are buying an asset there, understand what the costs associated with it are, and know what you're dealing with all that, okay? I mentioned insurance. Make sure that you also understand there's no open claims or any inspection issues related to that too. And again, make sure that all the permits, the taxes, licenses, make sure all that stuff is current. Otherwise, it's going to fall on you. Okay. And, you know, if you're not really sure about how to do all that, maybe get a CPA, get someone else that's very familiar with how to do this kind of stuff to look into that for you. No one's going to look at it as well as you do, so maybe it's something you take on with a CPA. So you don't just put it all on them and just they hand you a report. They're not going to do as good a job as you will because you care about the asset way better than they will. Okay, so reviewing all the legal, the regulatory issues, super, super, super important. Okay. I would also work with legal counsel to identify any liability exposures to ensure that you're buying an asset that follows the law and doesn't get you in any type of trouble. Okay, that's a real key thing here. So if you do it right, you can literally save millions of dollars if you do the due diligence process right. I know there's a lot to it here. All right, like I said before, if you're looking to get into this game and really understand how to put these deals together, themultifamilyadvantage.com. Go ahead and check that out. Okay, it's a mastermind that we put together. It's a 50-week mastermind. We go through, we underwrite deals. We go through and we show up deals. We pull them up on the screen and we tear them apart. We say why is a good deal, why it's not a good deal. Should you pursue it or not? What are the next steps? How should you be thinking about putting these deals together? Extremely important to understand how to do that kind of stuff. If you're going to try to do it on your own, hey, great, go ahead and do it on your own. It's fine. I mean, everybody's got to start somewhere. You don't have to, though. There's a whole family of people waiting for you here on the other side that can help you get into these deals and become successful at it so you can become a rock star at putting these types of things together. All right? So if you got any questions, by the way, if you're watching this on a replay, go ahead and put them in the comments below here on YouTube, right? It's where we post this thing up afterwards. And go ahead and put it in there and we'll be sure to get back to you. And again, if you want to know some of the links that I mentioned, they're going to be also in the YouTube description too. So usually this is uploaded 24 to 48 hours after we go live here. So that's all I got for you guys. A lot of dense information. So be sure if you do watch this again, take a lot of good notes. Okay, we cover a lot of stuff here. Guidetobrokers.com if you want to learn how to talk to the brokers. The brokers are really the key mediator between you and the deal. The brokers are right here in the middle, okay? Make sure you download that book so you better understand how to communicate to these folks, okay? That's really, they're the gatekeeper to all the deals, all right? All right, that's all we got, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you next week. Take care.